My own daughter called me delusional. Joyce stared her down in court, steady, unblinking. Across the aisle, Ava looked calm, until the investigators walked in. Ms. Ava Whitaker, the judge said, "You're being referred for elder financial abuse." Not a word from Joyce, just one slow stroke of her pen, because this time the signature wasn't stolen. It was earned. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Maple Grove, late morning. The sun filtered through the kitchen's bay windows like it had been invited, but not expected to stay. Ceramic mugs clinked against quartz. Somewhere, a dryer hummed in the distance. Joyce sat at the island counter, hands folded carefully in her lap. The pen in front of her was heavy, not physically, but in the way something gets when it knows it's not meant to be handled lightly. Across from her, Ava moved with mechanical grace. She wore a tailored navy cardigan, not a wrinkle in sight. Her nails painted the same wine red they'd been since her promotion last year. The folders she slid across the counter were crisp, organized, thick. "It's just routine stuff, Mom," Ava said, glancing at her watch. "Estate housekeeping, the kind of thing everyone does when life changes." Joyce blinked slowly. "Life changes?" "You had a stroke, remember?" Ava said, more gently than kindly. "Only a minor one, I know, but we have to be proactive. We can't just hope everything goes back to the way it was." "I feel fine." "You look fine," Ava replied quickly. "But that's not the same. These papers just make sure your affairs are streamlined, in case of, anything." Steve, Ava's husband, lingered in the background, pretending to browse his phone. He wasn't usually quiet. That made his silence today sound louder. Joyce reached for her glasses, slowly, letting the moment stretch. "What kind of paperwork is it?" Ava exhaled a half laugh. "Financial stuff, asset consolidation, a little update to your will, nothing you need to worry about. You don't understand all the legalese anyway, so just initial here and sign here." She pointed. Her fingernail tapped twice on the tabbed section. Joyce looked down. Legalese. That word echoed. Her memory wasn't perfect these days, not since the stroke, but it wasn't gone. And she remembered Harold, her late husband, saying more than once, "If someone tells you not to read the fine print, that's exactly when you should." "Give me a minute," Joyce said softly. Ava tensed. "Just for a heartbeat," then smiled again. "Of course." Joyce turned the page slowly. It wasn't just a financial update, it was a revised power of attorney, healthcare proxies, something about beneficiary reassignment. She didn't need to read it all to understand the direction it was heading. Ava thought she was slow now, vulnerable, easy to outmaneuver. Joyce reached for the pen. "Here?" she asked. Ava's eyes brightened. "Yes, there, and—" Joyce pressed the pen down and carefully wrote her initials, not her full signature, just J.M. Whitaker. Then she set the pen down. Ava didn't seem to notice. She was already bundling the documents. "Perfect. That's all we need for now. I'll drop these at the office before 5. Joyce nodded, serene. "Coffee's still hot. Take a cup for the road." Ava blinked, surprised. "Really?" "Of course," Joyce said. "You've worked hard." Minutes later, Ava and Steve were gone. The kitchen hummed again. The fake smile slipped from Joyce's lips. She reached beneath the counter where an old wooden recipe box sat untouched for years. Inside, beneath the index cards and faded clippings, was a small, yellowed address book. She flipped through it until she found the name. Miles Hensley, Estate Law. She dialed the number by memory. He answered on the third ring. "This is Miles." Joyce didn't waste time. "Miles, it's Joyce Whitaker." There was a pause. "Joyce? I haven't heard from you in— I need to review a document I just signed. Can you meet?" Another pause. "Of course. Tomorrow?" "No," she said, her voice steady. "Tonight." She hung up, exhaled, and looked out the window. The sky outside was cloudless, the kind of blue people always thought meant calm. But she'd lived long enough to know storms didn't always come with thunder. Maple Grove, that same night. The kind of darkness that didn't press, but waited. Miles arrived just after 7, coat still dusted in road salt, briefcase swinging like it had something to say. He hadn't changed much, still broad-shouldered, still carrying the weight of other people's regrets behind rectangular glasses. He stepped into Joyce's living room and looked around like the walls might talk. Joyce handed him the folder Ava had left. "Don't say anything until you've read every word." He nodded. Saturday adjusted his glasses and read. For 15 minutes, the only sound was the soft crinkle of pages turning and the occasional breath caught in Miles's throat. When he finally looked up, his expression was less surprise, more resignation. "She gave herself power of attorney," he said. "Full financial and medical, retroactive to last Thursday." Joyce didn't flinch. "Can she act on it?" "If it's processed," he said. "Yes. That means access to your accounts, the right to sell property, make medical decisions on your behalf, even revoke prior directives." Joyce's jaw tightened. "She said it was just financial stuff." "Technically true. Legally lethal." He tapped the page. "This section, see the language here? It treats your cognitive decline as a given, not a possibility. It implies that you're already incapable of managing your own affairs." Joyce looked at the window, where her reflection sat beside Miles's in the glass. "She's been planning this. Probably for longer than you think." Joyce didn't need longer. She had flashbacks, not of birthday parties or childhood hugs, but of quiet betrayals. The home equity loan Ava had begged for 2 years after Harold's funeral, "Just to float us for a bit, Mom. We're in between jobs." Joyce had co-signed, blindly trusting. 3 months later, the money was gone, swallowed by debt Ava never fully explained. Joyce had paid off the interest herself, one painful withdrawal at a time, and last Christmas, Ava accidentally used Joyce's debit card to book a vacation. When confronted, she'd laughed it off. "You've got the savings, Mom, and we never take time for ourselves." Joyce rose without a word and walked to the bookshelf. The third shelf down, 5th book from the right, a treasury of American folklore. She opened it halfway, then again near the back. A soft rustle, a hollow carved inside. She pulled out a bundle, the original loan paperwork from the equity deal, notarized, signed, lined in disappointment. Miles watched. "You kept it all." "I kept everything," Joyce said, "even when I wanted to forget." He nodded once. "Then you've got leverage. We can contest the POA, but we'll need to prove she manipulated your capacity, that she intended this before the stroke." Joyce reached for a notepad near the phone. She tore off a sheet, scrawled something, then slid it to him. "What's this?" he asked. "My memory log," she said. "Starting today." It read, January 12th at 8:47 a.m. Ava asked me what I wanted to eat, then chose something else. Said, "You used to like oatmeal." I told her I wanted eggs. She brought toast. Miles almost smiled. "You're documenting her control." "She underestimates me," Joyce said quietly. "Always has. That's her first mistake." He nodded. "And the second?" "She thinks she's the only one who knows how to play long." They talked for another hour, setting timelines, copying documents, making plans that felt less like defense and more like groundwork. When Miles finally left, Joyce stood at the door longer than necessary. Out in the driveway, Ava's car wasn't parked, but Joyce knew better than to think she wasn't watching. The next morning, Ava was different, more watchful. She hovered in the kitchen, her smiles edged with suspicion. "You're up early," she said. Joyce smiled back. Clarity does that. She poured herself tea, her hand steady, and as Ava turned away, Joyce reached into the pocket of her robe and pulled out a small voice recorder. New, labeled. She clicked it on. Some stories weren't remembered. They were built. Maple Grove, January 14th. The cold had settled into the bones of the house like it meant to stay. Joyce sat by the bay window, a blanket across her lap, knitting needles idle in her hands. From the outside, she looked docile, retired, comfortable. That's what Ava wanted to see, so that's what she gave her. Inside, her laptop glowed with an open tab on Title 15 of the U.S. Code, Fraud Against the Elderly. 2 windows behind it, One on legal guardianship, another on covert surveillance laws in Wisconsin. Down the hall, voices rose and fell. "She's awake earlier again," Steve said. "Didn't even need help getting dressed." "She's rallying," Ava replied. "That's what they do. It won't last. She'll exhaust herself trying to prove she's fine." Joyce didn't move. The recorder was hidden in a hollowed-out Kleenex box beside her. It caught every syllable. They'd started tightening their grip. Steve, helpfully, offered to take over her email management, citing spam risk. Ava changed her phone lock screen, just in case it gets lost. Joyce found out later her call logs were being reviewed nightly. She played along. The eggs were overcooked? She smiled. Must have forgotten to turn down the stove. The pharmacy texted a refill reminder. "Oh dear, I thought I filled that last week." Ava would correct her with that saccharine concern Joyce had learned to taste like a chemical. On Thursday, she asked if she could go for a short walk around the block alone. "Maybe let Steve go with you?" Ava suggested. "You know, just in case." Joyce nodded. "Of course. I wouldn't want to get lost." She didn't get lost. But she did stop in front of the white bungalow on the corner where Camilla lived, a woman 10 years younger, sharp-eyed, the kind who didn't miss much and never repeated gossip unless it was true. Camilla stepped out to water a dead plant, saw Joyce and tilted her head. "New boots?" she asked. "Old ones I remembered I had," Joyce replied. Camilla smiled. "You look different, brighter. Sleep helps. So does truth." Joyce hesitated. Camilla didn't push, just offered, "If you ever need anything, legal witness, house sitter, a quiet walk, I'm home most days." Joyce gave a polite nod and walked on. But she remembered that offer. That night, after Ava and Steve left to pick up groceries without offering to bring her, Joyce moved through the kitchen with quiet intent. She didn't open drawers loudly, didn't shuffle papers. She walked like someone who had practiced moving unnoticed. Ava's purse was left on the island, Steve's work bag on the counter, but it was the spiral-bound red notebook half-tucked under a magazine that caught her eye. It was Ava's handwriting, precise, looped. The cover read simply, "Finances, Q1 Plan." Joyce flipped it open to a page labeled Projected Sales Timeline. The first line, "Mom's Place, Zillow Comp, $445,000. Drop before March if market shifts." The second, "Account access window equals 30 days post-signature." Confirm W. Gentry before March 1st, Joyce didn't gasp. She didn't even blink. She just stepped back, pulled out her phone, and snapped 4 clean photographs. As she closed the notebook, she heard a garage door start to hum. Tires on the driveway. She reset everything, slid into her chair by the window, and clicked her laptop shut. When Ava entered carrying 2 bags of overpriced organic vegetables, she smiled. "Still awake?" Joyce blinked slowly. "Did I miss dinner?" "Not yet," Ava said. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Joyce replied, and meant it in every way that counted. She stared out the window after Ava went to unpack groceries. The sun had already set. Streetlights flickered on like watchers. Down the block, Camilla's porch light blinked twice. Office on, off again. Joyce stared at the blinking pattern, realized it wasn't a motion sensor. It was a signal. She reached into her pocket and clicked the recorder off, labeled the file, "They need the money before the market dips." For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a real smile. Let them play the part of caretakers. She was writing the part of survivor. Maple Grove, January 16th. The cold hadn't broken, but Joyce had. Not down, open. The house creaked more in winter. The walls settled, floorboards muttered, heating vents sighed with the weight of 3 decades. Most people would have called it aging. Joyce called it remembering. She stood barefoot in the upstairs hallway, staring at the wallpaper she'd chosen in 1984, small blue roses against cream. Faded now, but not forgotten. Back then, Charles had built the kitchen cabinets himself, measuring twice, cutting once, cursing only when the varnish ran. She'd stained the wood in the garage with Ava sitting cross-legged nearby, gluing macaroni to construction paper. That was before Ava started asking for more, before the loan, before the power of attorney, before the red notebook. Joyce stepped into the guest room, now her room, and opened the closet. It still smelled faintly of cedar and old linen. In the back, behind a rack of coats she hadn't worn in years, she pulled out a cardboard banker's box. Inside, old home files, school records, a VHS tape labeled First Dance Recital, 1991. She pulled out a thinner envelope marked Appraisal. Her name wasn't on it. Ava's was. Joyce scanned the date, January 9th. Less than a week after the estate paperwork. The report listed square footage, foundation notes, and a highlighted estimate, $452,000. A note scrawled in pencil at the bottom, "Need to act before Q2 rate hike." Joyce sat down on the carpet, legs crossed like the girl Ava once was. She stared at the report, then quietly dialed her bank. A woman named Melissa answered. Young voice. Polite. Joyce cleared her throat. "I need to confirm something on my property title. Is my house still listed under my name?" A pause. Typing. "Yes, ma'am. It's solely in your name. No liens, no joint owners, no power of sale recorded." Joyce exhaled, a sound between relief and restraint. "Thank you." She hung up, folded the appraisal into quarters, and slid it into her notebook behind the morning's log. Then she stood. Some people prepare for war with flags and armor. She went to the basement. The stairs creaked under her weight, but the air down there was honest, cold, dusty, sharp with old paint and newer regret. She flicked on the light. The walls were lined with shelves Charles had built, tools hung with surgical precision. Near the furnace, behind a rolling bin of Christmas decorations and forgotten curtain rods, sat an old filing cabinet. Top drawer, third folder back, deeds, titles, her will. But she wasn't here for paper. She crouched beside the water heater and pulled back a square of old carpet. Beneath it, the floor had been patched once. Poorly. She pried up the loose board and reached into the gap. Her fingers brushed metal. A key. Taped to it in Charles's handwriting, "If they ever try to take what's yours, don't let them." She closed her eyes, saw him in uniform, 1971, standing in front of the first apartment they'd rented after he came back from Okinawa. He'd always hated debt, had once called it invisible handcuffs made out of polite smiles. The key belonged to a small safety deposit box in a bank 2 towns over, one they never used for anything routine. She returned upstairs, locking the basement behind her. In the kitchen, Ava was microwaving tea. "You been up?" she asked. "Just getting steps in," Joyce replied, reaching for a banana. "Doctor says to keep moving." Ava nodded, unconvinced. "Don't overdo it," Joyce smiled. "I wouldn't dream of it." Later that night, she opened the hollow book again and slid the key inside, behind the loan documents. Then she made a new note in her log. January 16th, Ava had appraisal done, report marked urgent. Title still mine, house still mine. She tapped the pen against the paper once, then underlined the word mine. Outside, the porch light flickered from wind. Inside, she whispered something only the house could hear. "They built you to last. So I will too." She turned off the light and went to bed. Tomorrow, she'd visit the bank. And what they'd buried in paperwork? She was about to exhume it. Maple Grove, January 17th. The sky above the highway was steel-colored, as if even the daylight wasn't ready to declare sides. Joyce sat in the back seat of the rideshare car, coat zipped up to her chin, key in her pocket, a yellow folder on her lap. The driver made small talk, but she barely answered. Her thoughts were louder, sharper, the sort that didn't tolerate distraction. Miles's office sat on the second floor of a red brick building that used to house a dentist. The carpet still smelled faintly of fluoride and fear, but the door to Suite 207 was solid, marked with a brass plate, M. Hensley Estate and Trust Law. He opened the door before she knocked. "You ready?" he asked. Joyce stepped inside. "I've been ready since she told me I wouldn't understand what I was signing." He nodded once, gestured to the table already stacked with updated forms. "Then let's take back what's yours." She pulled out the original will from her bag, the one from 2012, back when things still felt whole. They walked through it clause by clause. He highlighted changes, drew arrows, asked twice if she felt sure. "I'm not angry," Joyce said, pen poised. I'm awake. With clean strokes, she revoked the prior will, initialed every margin, signed at the bottom. Then she added a new clause, the Joyce Whitaker Family Education Fund, to be divided equally among grandchildren upon admission to any accredited college or trade program. Another clause followed, a bequest to the Lantern Project, a women's legal aid nonprofit Joyce had donated to for years. And then the line she underlined twice, the individual known as Ava Whitaker shall receive no claim, right, or inheritance in part or whole from the estate of Joyce M. Whitaker. Miles leaned back, folded his hands. And the POA? Gone, Joyce said. Medical and financial, I want them reassigned. Miles, I trust you, and Camilla as my emergency contact. He studied her a moment longer. You're doing everything right, but this could escalate. Publicly. Joyce met his eyes. She went for the throat. I'm just returning the favor. Politely and with a pen. He almost smiled. This will get messy. Let it. They notarized everything, made copies. Miles filed the originals immediately with county records. Joyce watched him seal the envelope like it was armor. She left with nothing but her coat, her folder, and a calm that had edges. That evening she returned to the house. Ava was out, probably with Steve, playing grown-ups with money that wasn't quite theirs. Joyce microwaved tea she didn't plan to drink, opened her notebook, and logged the date. January 17th, new will filed, POA revoked, estate secure. Then she added something new. Sleep came easy tonight. Finally. But the next morning, it didn't stay that way. Miles called just before dawn. His voice wasn't panicked, just firm. You need to hear this before someone else tells you. Joyce sat up. What happened? I received a legal notice an hour ago. Ava filed for emergency guardianship, medical, financial, and residential authority. Joyce's chest went still, then quiet. She's claiming, he continued, that you're exhibiting cognitive instability. Says you're being manipulated, that you're making erratic financial decisions under duress. And the court? Joyce asked. They'll review it. It's procedural. But if they grant temporary guardianship while they investigate, she wins the house, my accounts, my voice. Only if we don't fight back, and fast. Joyce reached for her robe. Then we don't wait. Miles paused. This is where it gets ugly, Joyce. She looked out the window. The porch light Camilla had rewired blinked once, twice. A sign they'd agreed on if anything changed. Joyce smiled without warmth. No, Miles, this is where it gets real. She hung up, dressed without rushing, stepped outside just as Camilla approached across the yard with a thermos and a steel gaze. Bad news? Camilla asked. Joyce nodded. They're trying to bury me in paperwork again. Camilla raised an eyebrow. So? Joyce held up the yellow folder. I brought my own shovel. Maple Grove, January 18th. The frost on the grass cracked under Joyce's boots like brittle glass. She moved deliberately, quietly. Her strength didn't need noise anymore. By noon, the tech arrived. Name's Eric, he said, barely out of college, polite but curious. You want one in each common area or just the entry points? Joyce handed him a hand-drawn floor plan. Living room, kitchen, hallway, no bedrooms, audio and video, motion-activated, no cloud storage, local only. Eric blinked. You sure you're not former CIA? Joyce smiled. Just a woman who reads contracts before she signs them. By dinner time, the cameras were live. Black buttons tucked behind bookshelves and above cabinet molding. Silent, patient, undetectable. The recorder was synchronized, looped, and protected by a passcode even Ava wouldn't guess. 2 days passed before the system proved its worth. Joyce pretended to nap on the couch, eyes closed but ears sharp. She heard Steve's whisper first. She's out. Then Ava. Let's be quick. Joyce breathed evenly, felt the familiar heaviness of pretending helplessness. In the kitchen, the camera above the pantry caught everything. They opened drawers, pulled out folders, flipped through her mail. Ava whispered, If she's hiding anything new, it's not in here. Could be upstairs. Steve replied, She's getting smarter. Or she's hiding it from you, too. Joyce waited until the front door closed before opening her eyes. She didn't check the footage right away. She didn't need to. She already knew. The next morning, Miles forwarded the court petition Ava had filed. It read like fiction. Respondent displays erratic behavior, paranoia, forgetfulness, and consistent confusion with basic finances. Joyce read it 3 times. No rage, just a rising clarity that felt almost holy. She set the phone down, lit the kettle, and walked to the garden. Pulled weeds, turned soil, picked out the dead leaves from the potted lavender Ava had forgotten last summer. Then she took out her phone and began recording. "My name is Joyce Whitaker. I'm 68 years old. I had a mild stroke 6 weeks ago. I'm recovering. I take walks. I read. I manage my finances. I recognize lies when I see them." She turned the camera toward the garden bed. "I planted these myself last May. They bloomed early." She smiled into the lens. That night, she filmed herself balancing her checkbook, reading from Steinbeck, filling her weekly pill sorter with precision. She labeled each file, burned 2 USB copies, mailed one to Miles, the second to a backup attorney in Wauwatosa, a woman Camilla knew from her college days. "You sure she's trustworthy?" Joyce asked. Camilla replied, "She once disbarred her own cousin. I trust her." On January 20th, Joyce stood in front of the mirror and practiced speaking. Not to prove anything, but because when power was stripped from a woman like her, they always assumed silence would follow. Camilla arrived just after lunch, thermos in one hand, 2 court outfits on hangers in the other. "You're wearing the navy," she said. "Makes your eyes look like steel." Joyce raised an eyebrow. "Trying to impress the judge?" "No," Camilla said, smiling. "Trying to make Ava nervous." They laid everything out: documents, timestamps, footage summaries. Camilla had even laminated the affidavit confirming Ava's entry into the locked file drawer 2 days prior. "You nervous?" Camilla asked. Joyce tucked the flash drive into a small black case. "Number just ready." She turned to the mirror again, smoothed her collar, and took a long breath. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown sender. A single message. "You won't win. Even if you do, you'll be alone. Joyce read it twice, then deleted it. She clicked off the lamp and walked to the bay window. Outside, the snow had started to fall, slow, delicate, as if the world was about to be erased and rewritten in white. Behind her, Camilla spoke, soft but certain. "Whatever they say in court tomorrow, just remember, you've already won." Joyce didn't answer right away. She was watching the streetlight flicker, its bulb pulsing like it couldn't quite decide whether to burn out or burn brighter. She turned, finally, and smiled. "I'm just getting started." Maple Grove Courthouse, January 21st. The courtroom was neither grand nor cold, just the kind of beige where things got quietly decided and never fully forgotten. Joyce sat at the petitioner's table, not a defendant in law but in perception, her posture straight, her navy suit crisp, her hair freshly set, pulled back with understated dignity. Beside her, Miles clicked his pen once, then stilled it. Across the aisle, Ava looked immaculate in her camel coat and soft pink blouse, a tissue already tucked into her sleeve. Steve sat behind her, his jaw clenched too tight for someone supposedly here for support. The judge entered without ceremony, a middle-aged woman with a silver bun and reading glasses worn low like armor. She reviewed her notes silently, then nodded. "Let's begin." Ava's attorney rose. His voice dripped with performance. "Your Honor, we are here because our client, Ava Whitaker, fears for her mother's safety and welfare. Joyce Whitaker, following a recent stroke, has demonstrated lapses in judgment, disorientation, and growing paranoia. She is at risk of being influenced, isolated, and financially exploited." Joyce didn't blink. The attorney continued, laying out a timeline as if stitching together a quilt from scraps of bias. He cited Joyce's age, her quiet lifestyle, the sudden changes to her will, her rejection of family support. Then Ava stood. Tears glistened instantly. "I love my mother," she said, voice trembling. "But she's not the same. She hides things, writes things down obsessively. She barely remembers what day it is. This isn't about money, it's about making sure she's safe. Joyce glanced at the judge, who scribbled a note but gave nothing away. Miles stood next. Your Honor, I ask to enter Exhibit A into the record. He approached the clerk, placed a small black case on the table, opened it. Inside, a USB. On this drive is over 3 hours of time-stamped footage taken within the last week. My client performing daily tasks, reading, budgeting, gardening, not just lucid, but engaged, thoughtful, independent. He pressed a remote. The screen behind the judge flickered to life. There was Joyce, seated at her desk, reading aloud from East of Eden. I believe a strong woman may be stronger than a man, particularly if she happens to have love in her heart, her recorded voice said, steady, clear. Then another clip, Joyce filling a pill organizer with a precision that undercut every accusation. Another clip, Joyce in the garden, pointing to labeled rows of herbs and reciting their planting dates. Miles turned back to the courtroom. This woman is not unfit. She is under siege. A hush settled in the room. Ava broke it, softly but loud enough. She's confused. She doesn't know what she's doing anymore. The judge held up a hand. Ms. Whitaker, please. Joyce stood. May I speak, Your Honor? You may. She faced the court. No script, no bravado, just truth, unvarnished. I had a stroke. I rested. I recovered. I've spent the past month being told I'm too old, too fragile, too naive, but I'm not. I've lived through recessions, widowhood, motherhood, and betrayal, and I didn't survive all that to be erased in my own home. Her voice didn't shake, not once. I am capable, and I am aware. I signed a new will not in confusion, but in clarity. The judge stared at her for a long moment, then leaned forward. In order to determine fitness, we need more than anecdotal evidence. I'm requesting a full psychiatric evaluation. 2 weeks. Outpatient. Miles opened his mouth, but Joyce beat him to it. I'll agree, under one condition. I choose the evaluator, third party, neutral. The judge considered. Agreed. Ava let out a quiet gasp. Court is adjourned until February 5th. The gavel struck. Outside in the hallway, Camilla was waiting with 2 coffees and a look Joyce had started to recognize. Pride, just barely hidden beneath patience. How bad? She asked. Joyce exhaled, steady. Fair. Which is worse? For Ava. They walked out into the snow in silence, but as they crossed the lot, Ava's voice rang behind them. This isn't over. Joyce turned, just once. No, she said. It's just your turn to panic. Milwaukee, January 23rd. The clinic was housed in a limestone building that used to be a library. Joyce noticed the old book return slot repurposed into a mailbox. The irony didn't go unmarked. Her evaluator was a man in his early 40s, neatly dressed, wire-rimmed glasses, and a demeanor like he'd seen too many people already today. His name was Dr. Lucas Hammond. Let's begin with orientation, he said. State your name, age, today's date, and where we are. Joyce folded her coat neatly on the chair beside her. Joyce Marie Whitaker, 68, January 23rd. And we're in the converted Carnegie Building on East Knapp Street, though I imagine the clinic just goes by number now. Dr. Hammond blinked once, scribbled something. Over the next hour, she completed logic puzzles, named world capitals, recited proverbs both familiar and outdated. She cracked a dry joke about Noah's wife, running logistics, and earned the faintest smirk from him. By the time she completed the digit span recall, backwards, he lowered his pen. You seem prepared, he said, not quite accusing. I've been underestimated lately, she replied. It's become boring. He ran her through the final tests, emotional recognition, future planning, value judgments. He asked her to name 3 life goals. She didn't flinch. Protect what's mine, preserve what matters, and outlive anyone who thinks I can't. At the end, he closed the folder, leaned back, and studied her. You're sharper than half my grad students. Joyce smiled. I've been sharpening. Back in Maple Grove, Ava was doing her own sharpening, only with duller tools. She'd gone to the bank that morning with a forged protective intent letter claiming Joyce was slipping again. The clerk, a nervous young man named Jonah, flagged it for suspicious family interference. Per protocol, he sent a soft alert to the fraud unit. By 2 p.m., Joyce received a discreet call on her backup cell. "Mrs. Whitaker? This is Helen from First Union's fraud alert team. We've received a request from your daughter to freeze your accounts. Can you confirm if that request was made with your consent?" Joyce didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "I did not authorize anything," she said. "In fact, I'd like to place a flag on all financial and property transactions from anyone not named on my personal authorization list." "Understood, ma'am. Would you like to update the list now?" "I already have," she said. "Check the file under Legacy Directive." There was a pause, a breath. Then, "Got it. We're locking the accounts from third-party access. You'll receive a full confirmation tonight." "Thank you," Joyce said. Then added, "And please note the name Ava Whitaker for special watch." That evening, she returned to the guest room and sat by the window with her notebook, logged the events, then turned on the lamp and waited. At precisely 5:43 p.m., her phone rang. "Dr. Hammond." "I've compiled your results, Mrs. Whitaker." Joyce said nothing, only waited. "You passed every cognitive marker: logic, memory, emotional regulation, attention span, executive reasoning, all strong. Your score's in the 93rd percentile for your age group. Frankly, I'd trust you with my own financial planning." "Noted," Joyce said. "There is one thing." She stiffened slightly. He cleared his throat. "Your daughter made contact." Joyce's grip tightened. "When?" "Today. She requested my office consider family dynamics before submitting the report to the court, asked if we could delay the results, implied there might be miscommunication. She tried to interfere. I recorded the call. I'll include it with the report to the judge." Joyce let out a breath, slow, full. "Thank you, Doctor Hammond. I'll see you in court." As she hung up, the wind pressed against the window panes like a restless witness. Joyce stood and opened the drawer of her desk, removed a blank envelope and tucked in a small photo of her with her grandkids, taken 2 years ago on her birthday. Before Ava had started rehearsing grief that hadn't happened yet, she addressed the envelope to herself, wrote on the back, "Remember who you're fighting for," then walked to the fireplace, stirred the logs, and added a single match. Because some truths weren't meant to be spoken, they were meant to be proven, and hers was just getting loud. Maple Grove Courthouse, February 5th. The hearing resumed under a ceiling that buzzed faintly with fluorescent fatigue, as if even the lights were tired of watching families come undone. Joyce stepped into the courtroom wearing a charcoal gray coat over her navy suit, her scarf tucked with surgical precision. Camilla walked beside her, not as a witness this time, but as a presence, solid, grounding. Miles was already seated at their table, flipping through documents with the calm of someone who knew the playbook because he helped write it. Across the aisle, Ava sat alone. Steve wasn't there. Her blouse was brighter than last time, coral this time, maybe in an attempt to look softer, but her posture was stiff. Her eyes darted each time the door opened, hoping maybe the judge would be someone else. No such luck. Judge Rosen entered at 9:01 a.m., glasses low, tone flat. "Ms. Whitaker, Mr. Hensley, let's proceed." Miles stood and handed over the packet. "Lab results, doctor. Hammond's summary. Timestamps of cognitive function, memory retention, and executive processing skills." He passed a second folder to the clerk. Exhibit B contains a recording of an unsolicited call made by Ms. Ava Whitaker to Dr. Hammond, requesting a delay and reevaluation of the cognitive results. The judge raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds?" Joyce didn't flinch. She didn't have to. Miles answered calmly. "No grounds stated, just family dynamics. Your Honor, we believe that to be an intentional attempt to manipulate the court." Ava's lawyer, a new one, younger, clearly, briefed too quickly, rose, papers in hand. "Your Honor, the petitioner only acted out of concern. She believes her mother is in decline, and these documents may reflect a short-term performance spike, not long-term stability." Judge Rosen didn't look up. She scored in the 93rd percentile, and the evaluator said he'd trust her with his own finances. The young lawyer faltered, "Yes, but Mr. Lang, The judge interrupted. Unless you have a medical license or fresh evidence, I suggest you sit down. Joyce felt her breath settle. Not rise. Settle. The judge turned to her. Ms. Whitaker, do you wish to make a final statement before I rule? Joyce stood, her palms flat on the table. No one likes to admit their child has betrayed them, she said, voice steady. It goes against every instinct. But I've learned recently that instincts are only useful when you listen to them. I didn't, and now I am. She looked directly at Ava, whose face froze in a mask just short of tears. I know everything. The accounts, the letter to the bank, the appraisal, the surveillance footage, the interference with my doctor, the notebook with the market deadline. She paused. You're out, Ava. The words didn't echo, but they didn't need to. The silence that followed carried them further than volume ever could. The judge nodded once, as if it was all she needed. Guardianship petition is denied, she said. All powers of attorney previously revoked shall remain so. Joyce Whitaker is found legally and medically competent. Gavel. Done. Ava stood, lips parted, but no sound came out. The judge was already gone. Miles began packing up the folders. Camilla touched Joyce's shoulder just once. Ava turned, knocking her chair slightly as she moved. Her heels echoed down the hall outside the courtroom, sharp, hurried, furious. Joyce didn't watch her leave. She just sat for one more moment and let the stillness settle in. Not peace, not yet. But the calm that always came right before the next front moved in. Miles leaned over. We need to transfer the rest of your assets. Accounts, title, pension. Fast. Today? She asked. Today, he said, before they think of another angle. Outside, the sky was gray but dry. Camilla opened the car door, and Joyce climbed in without help. She looked out at the courthouse. Her voice was low. She thought it would be easy. Camilla replied, She never saw you coming. But Joyce wasn't smiling now because she knew Ava would come back. Next time, with sharper lies, and she would be ready. Milwaukee, February 6th. The IRS regional field office wasn't the kind of place people walked into with confidence, but Joyce had shed fear like an old skin. She wore her steel wool resolve and carried a manila folder that had grown heavier with truth. She waited 20 minutes in a room with stained carpet and a vending machine that whirred louder than necessary. When her name was called, she stood as though she were rising in court again. The rep was a woman in her 50s. Sharp bob, sharper glasses. Agent Dana Whitlow, she said, shaking Joyce's hand firmly. I reviewed your intake. Walk me through what you're seeing. Joyce laid out the evidence like pieces on a chessboard. This appraisal document was submitted with Ava's name listed as co-owner. She is not. This tax filing from last year lists a deduction under elder care expenses using my name, but I never authorized that. This withdrawal was flagged at my bank, an account she tried to close without permission. Whitlow narrowed her eyes. You're saying she's claimed you as a dependent and also attempted to sell your property? Yes, without my knowledge, and I have both legal and medical documentation showing I am competent. Her guardianship attempt failed last week. Do you have anything that ties her activity to her financial filings? Joyce tapped the folder. Copies of emails between her and a broker. Her own handwriting estimating the Q1 sales window on my home. All sent while I was in recovery. Whitlow gave a slow nod. You came prepared. I came for the truth. Not revenge, Joyce said, then paused. Well, maybe a little. They filed a report under Section 7206, fraud and false statements. Joyce signed the form with deliberate care, initials neat, signature precise. By the time she returned to Maple Grove, her phone buzzed. Miles, we have something. A whistleblower in Ava's CPA firm flagged a discrepancy in 2 tax years. I've got a contact at the Financial Crimes Unit. This might go federal. Joyce's reply was brief. Let them come. I'm done hiding. That afternoon, she met her grandchildren, Emily and Carter, at a corner cafe near their school. Ava hadn't answered Joyce's texts for months, but her ex-husband had replied within minutes. They miss you. Say the word. Emily ran up first, arms tight around Joyce's waist, followed by Carter, trying not to look like he'd cried already. Grandma, "Why can't we see you more?" Emily asked, eyes wide. Joyce brushed hair from her face. "Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. But I'm fixing it. I promise." Over hot cocoa and grilled cheese, they talked about school and video games and a birthday party someone else was having. Ava's name didn't come up until the end. As Carter reached for his coat, he hesitated. "Can I tell you something?" Joyce leaned in. "Anything." He glanced at his sister, then back, voice barely above a whisper. "Mom said you'd be gone by summer." The words didn't hit like a punch. They landed like an anchor. Joyce blinked. "She said that?" Carter nodded. "Not to us. But we heard her on the phone. She was mad. Said she needed the money before the old house turns to rot." Emily looked confused, not understanding, but Carter understood plenty. Joyce exhaled slowly. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded receipt. Wrote 2 phone numbers on the back. "One is mine," she said. "The other is someone who can always reach me, if you ever need help or feel like something's wrong." Carter nodded solemnly. Joyce tucked the receipt into his jacket pocket, buttoned it herself. "I'm not going anywhere," she said softly. "Not until I make sure you're safe from all this." Later that night, Miles called again. The IRS accepted the fraud claim. Her name's officially red-flagged. Financial investigators looped in. "We're drafting a civil suit next." Joyce stood at the kitchen window, watching the bare branches sway. "Good," she said. "Keep going." She hung up and walked to the fireplace, pulling out the notebook from behind the logs. Flipping to today's date. February 6th. Ava filed deductions under false care. Claimed property. Lied to her children. Told them I wouldn't last the summer. Joyce picked up her pen and wrote, "Now she won't last the spring." Maple Grove. February 8th. The day broke cold and dry, the kind that left frost on the inside of window panes and made you feel like the air itself wanted something. Joyce dressed in layers, not for warmth, but for finality. This was the day she closed the doors Ava kept trying to break through. The first stop was the insurance office, a small squat building near the water tower, run by a man who still used carbon paper. Joyce handed over the forms without ceremony. "I need all beneficiaries reviewed. Remove Ava Whitaker from every policy. Life, long-term care, anything she was ever listed on." The agent blinked. "Do you want to add someone else?" She already had it typed. Camilla Jordan and Miles Hensley. Emergency contacts, notification designees. People who had proved their loyalty without asking for anything in return. "Effective immediately," she said. He nodded, made copies and stamped everything twice. She left with the originals, untouched by hesitation. At the bank, the process was quieter. The same young clerk, Jonah, had been promoted to manager last week. He recognized her immediately. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said, standing. "Is today the big shift?" She nodded. "Let's make it irreversible." They moved to a private room where she signed documents that finalized her trust. The property she once shared with Charles, the house that raised Ava, the funds that survived recessions, funerals, and betrayal, now reassigned. Not just protected, purposed. The home's ownership will transfer at the time of death to a non-profit foundation, she told Jonah. The Lantern Project. They provide legal support and transitional housing to women facing elder abuse. "I want this place to mean safety again, not secrets." "Understood," he said. "You'll retain full control and ownership until that time." "Exactly," she replied. "It's mine, but when it's not anymore, I decide who it helps." He printed the confirmation. She signed it cleanly, the way Ava always rushed. Later that afternoon, she returned home with 2 copies of the deed and a small brass key in her coat pocket. Camilla was waiting on the porch with 2 cups of chamomile and her usual smirk. "You look like a woman who just kicked a ghost out of her attic." Joyce handed her the cup. "Not a ghost, just something pretending to be family." They sat in silence for a few minutes, letting the weight of things settle. Then Joyce rose and walked back inside. The hallway felt different now, less like it was watching her. More like it was listening. She opened the hall closet, pulled down a sealed white envelope tucked into a linen napkin holder. The handwriting on it was unmistakable. Ava's, always rounded, with too many loops like she was trying to soften words that didn't deserve it. It was postmarked 2 days ago. Inside was a letter, an apology. Sort of. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just panicked. I was scared. You don't understand how hard things have been. I thought if I could just fix it quietly, we'd all be okay. I miss you. The kids miss you. Maybe we can talk soon. Joyce read it once, not twice. She walked to the kitchen trash, opened the lid, and dropped it in without ceremony. No fire, no rage, just removal. She watched it settle among the coffee grounds and lemon peels like it belonged there. She washed her hands. An hour later, she arrived at the Lantern Project's office, a modest, blue-trimmed house just past the city limits. The director, a middle-aged woman named Laurel, met her at the front step. "You didn't have to come in person," Laurel said. Joyce pulled the brass key from her pocket and pressed it into her palm. "I did." Laurel looked at it. "This is the house. The whole damn house. When the time comes, it's yours. No sales, no probate, no red tape, just keys in hand and doors open." Laurel's eyes misted, but she didn't cry. She just nodded. "We'll make it mean something." Joyce smiled. "I already did." As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed again. A voicemail from a blocked number. No transcript, just a timestamp, 6:03 p.m. She didn't press play. Some voices only wanted in, so they could keep pulling strings. Joyce slipped the phone into her bag, zipped it shut, and looked out across the snow-glazed horizon. Let Ava leave 100 letters. She had already written her last one, and it was signed in steel. Maple Grove, February 12th. The headline was simple. No italics, no exclamation points. "I was almost erased by my own daughter. Read that again." By Joyce Whitaker, guest columnist, Maple Grove Chronicle. It ran on page 3 of the Friday edition, tucked between a county board update and an obituary for a local teacher. But by mid-morning, it had gone digital. And viral. The letter was plain-spoken but sharp. It didn't name Ava. It didn't have to. Joyce detailed the slow erosion of agency, how estate planning had turned into silent theft, how guardianship could be weaponized, how cognitive assumptions were often cover for calculated control. It ended with a line that people screenshot and shared like scripture. "Just because I need help with the groceries doesn't mean I need help existing." By noon, her inbox was flooded. A women's rights nonprofit in Madison wanted to amplify her story. A state senator's office requested permission to reference the piece in upcoming elder protection legislation. A podcaster from Chicago emailed, "Would you be open to telling this story aloud? We think people need to hear your voice." Joyce didn't rush to reply. She'd spent too long being unheard to give it away quickly. The local news station called next. Camilla answered first, screening the reporter. "She's not doing this for sympathy," Camilla said. "She's doing it because nobody talks about what it feels like to be targeted by your own blood and called paranoid for noticing." Joyce agreed to one interview. It aired on Tuesday night, low lighting, neutral backdrop, just her and a microphone. "I'm not a victim," she said calmly. "I'm a witness of what happens when someone confuses your trust with permission." The comments were brutal, but not toward her. The footage of Ava's court performance resurfaced. Clips from the guardianship hearing, her watery eyes and too smooth lines. People began putting the pieces together. A woman in the PTA sent a private message. "She tried to fundraise for your care, while filing to have you declared incompetent." The whispers spread fast. At the grocery store, a neighbor passed by without saying hello. 2 cars slowed near Ava's driveway, then kept driving. One even took photos. Joyce didn't celebrate, but she did feel something deeper. Stillness. On Friday afternoon, a letter arrived at her doorstep. No return address. But the handwriting wasn't Ava's. It was Steve's. The note was only 3 sentences long. "I read what you wrote. You were right. I'm filing for separation this week. Steve." Joyce read it twice. Then once more. She placed the letter in her hollowed-out book, not for sentiment, but for record-keeping. That evening, she sat by the fireplace with her tea untouched beside her. Snow fell steady, hypnotic, and she nearly missed the vibration of her phone. A message, unknown number. But the language was unmistakable. Carter, I'm sorry for what she said. We didn't mean it. We want to see you. Please don't give up on us. Then another. Emily. I didn't know what was real. I do now. Can we come over sometime? Just us. Joyce held the phone for a long time, not reading, feeling. She typed slowly. Of course. I never gave up on you. I just had to make space for truth. I'll leave the porch light on. She didn't press send yet. She stood and walked to the coat closet, opened the same drawer where Ava's letter once lived. She pulled out a lighter, flicked it once, then walked to the back deck and set a match to the paper trail, receipts, copies, scanned notes. Not the originals, not the proof, just the shadow of the storm. Flames curled up, gentle at first, the kind that didn't destroy, just transformed. Behind her, the house glowed. Ahead of her, the cold night waited. Her phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a beginning. Maple Grove, February 16th. The Lantern Project's conference room smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant and something warmer, like hope steeped slowly in tired air. Joyce sat across from a woman no older than 30, her baby asleep in a carrier at her chest. Her name was Tasha Bell. She wore a borrowed blazer over a faded hoodie, and her hands trembled when she reached for the coffee Camilla had set in front of her. I read your article, Tasha said, eyes flicking down. Didn't know women like you could get cornered like that. Joyce smiled, soft and level. It happens more often than people admit. Manipulation doesn't knock politely, it slips in with the groceries. Tasha exhaled, like something inside her had been waiting to deflate. My mom left when I was 10. My ex emptied the account the same week I had Ella. I've been trying to stay above water since. Joyce didn't flinch. She just reached into her bag, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the table. Inside was her updated will, just notarized that morning. It included the name of a new educational trust. It listed Ella Bell and any future siblings as sole beneficiaries of a certain earmarked portion of Joyce's estate. This isn't charity, Joyce said before Tasha could object. It's legacy, and legacy should begin where need and promise meet. Tasha's eyes filled but didn't spill. Are you sure? She whispered. Joyce nodded. Dead sure, and very much alive to make it official. Later that evening, Camilla hosted a celebration in Joyce's kitchen. Nothing grand, just a small cake, 2 glasses of elderflower tonic, and a toast scrawled on a note card in Camilla's looping cursive, to freedom signed in ink. Miles joined after dinner, briefcase in hand, tie loosened. He placed a final set of documents on the table, transfer confirmations, trust execution, and a formal record of Ava's full legal removal from all estate matters, effective immediately. Joyce initialed each one. She didn't rush. Each pen stroke felt like a door shutting behind her, not in bitterness, in safety. Miles raised a brow. You good? Joyce looked up. Better than good. I'm thorough. He laughed, just once, and tapped the top sheet. You've outmaneuvered attorneys half your age this past month. Imagine what I could have done if I'd been underestimated earlier, she replied. As the night wore down, Joyce stood alone by the sink, washing the few dishes left. The window above her showed the porch light flickering gently, no longer a signal of warning, but of welcome. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Caller ID, Ava Whitaker. She dried her hands, stared at the screen. It rang 4 times before she declined. 1 minute later, the voicemail notification appeared. Joyce waited, then pressed play. Ava's voice was tight, wound up like a wire. Mom, I saw the article. I saw the interviews. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you don't get to rewrite everything. You don't get to make me the villain. I was trying to help you. If you'd just talk to me. A pause, a sharper inhale. Whatever. If this is how you want to play it, fine. Just know you lost more than you think. Then silence. Joyce deleted it. No saving. No notes. No reply. She turned and walked upstairs to the small writing desk in her guest room, pulled out her logbook, dated the page, February 16th. Ava called. I declined. She stared at the page for a moment, then added one more line beneath it, carefully. Her last words still don't sound like love. Then she closed the book. Downstairs, Camilla turned on the radio. A soft jazz tune drifted upward, almost absurd in how peaceful it was. Joyce leaned back in her chair, hands folded in her lap. And for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself the thought. She wasn't just surviving this story anymore. She was writing the ending. One she chose. One Ava couldn't touch. Maple Grove Courthouse, February 22nd. The room smelled like worn carpet and fluorescent bulbs, judgment dressed in the ordinary. Joyce stepped through the doors like she had before, calm, polished, and alone in the ways that mattered. Camilla sat behind her this time, quiet, steady. Miles stood to her right, a stack of papers like quiet armor between them. Ava was already seated at the petitioner's table. Her new attorney, a third in as many weeks, spoke in hushed tones that Ava barely acknowledged. She looked thinner, not physically, but worn down in ways that ambition didn't protect. Judge Rosen entered. The bailiff announced the hearing. "This is a follow-up to the petition regarding the amended estate," the judge said. "Ms. Whitaker, you may proceed." Ava's attorney rose first. "Your Honor, we are prepared to present evidence that the revised will submitted by Mrs. Joyce Whitaker was made under coercion, and that my client believes the cognitive evaluation was misrepresented." "Objection," Miles said, rising. "Your Honor, this is the third attempt to challenge already adjudicated findings, including verified evaluations and notarized documents signed in the presence of neutral witnesses." "Overruled, for now," the judge said evenly. "But tread carefully, counsel." Ava stood next. Her voice was rehearsed, but her tone wavered. "My mother doesn't understand what she's done. She's been influenced by Camilla, by Mr. Hensley. She doesn't know what she's giving up." Joyce didn't look at her daughter. Not yet. She waited. When prompted, she stood. "In front of you is a full copy of my amended will," Joyce said, addressing the court. "It was signed on February 2nd, notarized the same day, and witnessed independently. I will now walk the court through each page." She did. Clause by clause, no script, no hesitation. She named the education trust for Ella and any future children of Tasha Bell. She outlined the transition of her home to the Lantern Project. She listed the names of her new medical POAs and legal proxies. Every line landed like a nail in wood, measured, final, unshakable. Then she turned to the judge and for the first time looked directly at Ava. "This wasn't done in confusion," Joyce said. "It was done in clarity. I know who I am. I know what I own. And I know who tried to erase both." Ava's mouth opened slightly, as if to interrupt. Joyce raised her voice, not loud but deep enough to carry. "She didn't lose the will, Your Honor." The room went still. "She lost her mother." No one spoke, not even Ava. The judge sat back, hands folded, then turned to Ava's lawyer. "Do you have anything else?" He hesitated. "No, Your Honor." "Then I see no legal grounds to dispute the validity of the amended will." The gavel struck once. "Case closed. The new will stands." Joyce exhaled once. That was all she allowed herself. Then, "One more matter," Judge Rosen said, removing her glasses. "This court has received evidence submitted under seal, corroborated by financial records and testimony from a licensed fraud examiner." Miles didn't move, but Joyce felt his stance tighten beside her. The judge looked directly at Ava now. "Ms. Whitaker, you are hereby referred to the Wisconsin State Attorney General's Office for investigation into potential financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult." Ava's face went slack. "Bailiff," the judge added, "please provide Ms. Whitaker with the formal referral document. She may remain in the building for no longer than 10 minutes. Escort if necessary." The bailiff approached. Ava stood, unsteady. "You can't. This is harassment. She's my mother." Joyce said nothing. Ava looked to her, pleading, then furious. But Joyce didn't blink. She didn't reach. She didn't flinch. The door closed behind Ava with a hollow, final click. Outside, it had started to snow again. Inside, Joyce sat down. picked up her pen, and underlined one line in her notes. Justice isn't loud, but it never forgets. She looked up at Miles, then at Camilla, and said what none of them had expected. We're not done yet. Maple Grove, April 4th. The sun crept across the hardwood floor of Cottage 9B like it had all the time in the world. Joyce sat by the front window, a paperback in one hand, her other trailing gently along the leaves of the peace lily Camilla had brought her last week. The new place wasn't grand. It didn't need to be. It was hers. Quiet, sunlit, and trimmed in ivy and clean beginnings. The senior living community wasn't a retirement home. It was a row of private cottages nestled beside a wooded path and a duck pond that had seen better summers. Joyce chose the one on the end. More sunlight. Fewer neighbors. It reminded her of her first apartment after college, the one she furnished with library books and borrowed casseroles. Books lined every shelf now, some well-read, others waiting. A framed photo of Ella and Carter sat on her writing desk, next to the logbook she still updated once a week, not with court dates anymore, but garden schedules and good dreams. This morning's mail brought 5 birthday cards, one handwritten in thick purple marker from Emily. Happy 69th, Grandma. I'll visit with the cupcakes this time. No lemon. Another envelope had no return address. Inside, a printed photo of the Lantern Project's newest intake room, painted soft green. A caption scribbled underneath, "Your house helps women breathe again." Joyce tucked it into her mirror frame, just below the edge. Not displayed, but not hidden either. By 10 a.m., Camilla arrived, balancing 2 lattes and a newspaper folded to the crossword. "I beat the rain," she said, handing over the coffee. "You always do," Joyce replied. "It's why I keep you." They sat on the small patio beneath the wind chimes. A breeze stirred the leaves like a secret being passed between old friends. "Anything good in the gossip section?" Joyce asked. Camilla nodded toward the community newsletter. "Apparently Ruth in 7C is dating again, man with a fishing boat and 4 ex-wives." Joyce chuckled. "Tell her to check for power of attorney papers." They sipped in silence for a while. No tension. No timelines. Inside, a small television played muted footage from a local news segment. A familiar foundation volunteer, a woman with kind eyes and a permanent ponytail, read from a children's book in a circle of young faces. Joyce leaned closer. Carter sat cross-legged in front. Ella, now 5, leaned her head against his shoulder. Joyce smiled, eyes crinkling. Camilla caught the glance. "You did it, you know." Joyce didn't answer. She didn't need to. Later that afternoon, Joyce sat at her desk with a stack of papers. None urgent, none hostile. A magazine renewal, a thank you note from a scholarship recipient, the new deed from the Lantern Project, returned and notarized. She flipped to the last page. Signature line blank. The same hand that once trembled before signing power away now moved with perfect clarity. She picked up her pen, hovered. In the quiet, her thoughts carried like a voiceover, soft but rooted. Some things we sign out of fear, some out of exhaustion or pressure or guilt, but some we sign out of power, out of knowing, finally, what's worth protecting. She pressed ink to paper. No flourish, just truth. Then she set the pen down beside her. The wind pushed gently at the open window, rustling the curtain. The final line lived in silence, in stillness, in everything she'd reclaimed. This signature was mine, and mine alone.